It's hard these days to stand out in the world of film, especially in the genre of horror. To stand out, you either have to be a visionary like Jordan Peele, or create an R-rated Winnie the Pooh horror movie. But, even if your film isn't genre-breaking, there's ways to make it stand out and be something special. So, for today's Forgotten Films video, I thought I'd take a look at the underrated horror film, You're Next. Directed by Adam Wingard, who would go on to make films like Godzilla vs. Kong and whatever the hell Netflix's Death Note was. While he had made some smaller films before, this is the film that got him on the map, and it's not hard to see why. You're Next is a surprisingly fun and thrilling horror movie that honestly surprised me the longer the film went on. Even though it came out over 10 years ago, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible because I think it's best to go in as blind as you can. The premise of this is surprisingly simple. A family all meets up for a weekend retreat only to be attacked by a group of home invaders. Hearing this premise, you wouldn't think this is anything special other than it's just another low-budget horror film. But, as I said before, this film quickly begins to show it's a bit more than that simple premise, and it makes for one hell of a ride. For me, horror is not one of my favorite genres of films. Not because I hate being scared, but because I'm just not the biggest fan of the tropes and the methods of how scares are delivered. There's certainly a lot of horror films I love, like Get Out, Alien, Dr. Sleep, The Lighthouse. These films I love because they don't adhere to the tropes of other horror movies and also have something distinct to make them stand out, whether it be with its themes, visual styles, or types of scares. I think that's why I didn't initially check out You're Next, mainly because I was 11 when it came out, but even in recent years, it just never seemed like one that would interest me. I guess that's also why a lot of people haven't really seen or talked about the movie since. On the surface, it doesn't seem to have anything to really pull people in unless they're diehard fans of the genre. But once you get past the surface, this is truly a blast from start to finish. Being only an hour and 35 minutes, this movie wastes no time in getting to the kills and scares, and as the film progresses, they keep amping up, and by the end, I only wanted to see more. A lot of horror movies can become bogged down by things like bad pacing and poor character work, but thankfully this film isn't bogged down by either of those. While the character work isn't anything to write home about compared to some other horror films I've seen lately, there's definitely some fun to be had with how some are written and it fits the genre perfectly. I'm not going to act like I remember any of the characters' names or their entire life's backstory, but Wingard understands that wasn't necessary for this film to work. What makes films of this type work is giving us characters with easy, definable traits and not wasting time getting to the kills. Had this tried to be more in-depth with its character work rather than get to the kills, I don't think this would have worked as well. Also, this film has a surprising amount of dark humor to it that actually works surprisingly well. I always find it more enjoyable when a horror director is clearly having fun making their film and doesn't shy away from finding dark and twisted ways to make the audience laugh. Not only does it make the film more entertaining, but it can genuinely surprise you when there's intentional comedy in a horror film. While this film isn't perfect with its scares, the dreaded jump scares and fake outs do make their appearance. There's definitely some good tense moments, and by the halfway mark, you have no idea what's going to happen, and it makes the film all the more intense. Again, on the surface, this seems like a really simple film, and Wingard uses that to his advantage. Similar to The Cabin in the Woods, the filmmakers take your expectations for what the film should be and flips it on its head. While Your Next doesn't go to the lengths that The Cabin in the Woods does, it certainly makes for one hell of a time. Adam Wingard's filmography since the release of this hasn't been too bad compared to other horror filmmakers, and I hope that after the success of Godzilla vs. Kong, he goes back to making films like this again. The guy has some serious talent with not just building tension, but also shifting between a serious horror tone and darkly humorous one. On paper, it makes sense he was chosen to make Netflix's Death Note, but the execution was... yeah. If you haven't checked out You're Next, I highly recommend doing so. It's a blast from start to finish, and I can guarantee you're gonna be surprised.